We love so much. You already clapped for him. You know he's in the house. But what did we think overall? I hope you were pleasantly surprised. It's a warm-hearted, just wonderful labor of love. And I would love to introduce the reason you're really here. Writer, producer, and star, Will Arnett.
Thank those two people.
Super fans, we appreciate it. What's fun is we got to kind of watch and hear a little bit of the audience reactions at the end. How does it feel getting to kind of release this with the world and feeling how audiences embrace it?
Well, first of all, I do want to thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot. It's thrilling after all this time to come in and catch the last couple minutes and with an audience, with a real audience. You guys are a real audience. And so it is a thrill, and it's very gratifying. Like I said, after all this time, we put a lot of work into it, and to be here and to watch people enjoy it and laugh at moments where I didn't expect it, and just having like a real reaction to it. It's great. Yeah.
The journey to get here was longer probably than you thought it would have been. Can you kind of talk us through how we got here?
It was 55 years. Well, not that journey.
Hey, captive audience, you can go there.
Okay, great. It was a long journey. As it said at the end, it's inspired by a true story. I met a comedian by the name of John Bishop. I don't know if anybody's familiar with John. He's an English comic, amazing, hilarious guy. We met on a barge in Amsterdam, of course. That's a true story. And we were having lunch through a mutual friend. It's my first and only time in Amsterdam, and I was not high. And we met, and he told me the story of how he became a stand-up comic and how he was going through a divorce. And Mondays were really tough. He dropped his kids off at school, and he knew he wasn't going to see them again until the weekend. And one night he went for a drink on a Monday, and he was really down in the dumps. And he didn't want to. They were charging a cover because they were doing open mic, and he didn't want to pay. And so he put his name down, kind of in a huff, and went in. And then they called him up, and he had a couple of beers. And then he found himself. I remember him telling that, kind of for the first time, talked about what he was going through and kind of admitted it to himself. And then he found himself going the next week, and then the next week, and not telling anybody he was doing this. And then months later, he was doing he got offered a Saturday night bill, and he was trying to figure out what to do with his kids. All that was true, and his ex came into the bar with a new group of friends and had no idea he was doing that. And she heard them say, "Please welcome John Bishop." And she was like, "Wait, what?" And yeah, so that part of the story, the bones of that was all the stuff that was like the most improbable was the most true.
When you were writing it, did you always kind of hope and plan to also be in it?
Yes. Yes and no. Yes, hope. No, not really planned, because I know how it goes.
Yeah.
And I love this story. Mark Chappell and I, as my writing partner, started writing it, and then we were originally at Focus, and then we ended up at Searchlight. And I know how it goes, and I didn't know if they were going to let me have a shot at doing something like this that was going to be dramatic because of how people know me or perceive me or whatever. And it was really when Bradley came on. Bradley and I are old friends, and I happened to be talking about what I was working on, and he said, "Let me look at it," because we were kind of at an impasse with the script. And he FaceTimed me like a week later, and he just said, "I want to work on this if that's okay, and you need to be the guy." And so I was like, okay.
I think there's, in some of the promotional materials, there's really great quotes from Mr. Cooper talking about Will in that.
You can call Bradley.
He knows. Bradley just saluting, singing your praises, just that people don't know how good you can be in dramatic and Plexio's acting. council. So I think you would all agree that it's a special piece of work on Will's behalf, just because we get to see him do something a little different. Or was it just kind of a collaborative?
Well, I think that once Bradley came on, he really wanted to kind of, we never really wanted to tell the story about this guy becoming a famous stand-up. That wasn't what really interested us. But Bradley really wanted us to kind of dig into the relationship and what it was and that disconnect between Alex and Tess. And when people get so far apart, that they can't see each other's perspective, and they don't even have the language to know how to start talking again and reconnecting. And that was the part that Bradley just really, he brought so much to it. I mean, Bradley did everything. He operated, the camera. He was the A-camera operator basically for the whole film. So yeah, and that came out of, we were doing camera testing, and he was operating, and he was like, sort of trying to find the language of the movie, and it was just me and him and Matthew Levitique, who's the cinematographer, who's also one of the stand-ups. The stand-up who says, "Don't key my Tesla," that's our cinematographer. He was way too eager to play that part. I'm like, Manny, would you consider, he's like, yes. And so Bradley, in that process, decided that he wanted, and he joined the operators union and started operating. And so on every level, he brought so much from the writing. He really transformed the script. He did a final pass on it. It was his, and he just elevated it. And then through every single step of the process, he was just incredible.
Yeah, you talked about the stand-up a little bit, which we'll get to the relationship with Laura in just a second. But you and Bradley did kind of an unconventional approach in you prepping for the stand-up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we knew it kind of we knew that I was going to have some experience or try to understand what stand-up. I'm not a stand-up. I've never done it before. I have a really healthy respect for stand-up. I don't know if anybody here has done stand-up or is a stand-up. Anybody ever tried it before? You don't want to raise your hand. One reluctant hand. Couple. Yeah. It's hard. It's scary. And but it was important to try to do it. So we started going to the Comedy Cellar where we shot all the stand-up in New York, and they'd introduced me as Alex Novak, and I would go out as Alex Novak, and people would laugh because they're like, "What's happening?" I started talking about my divorce, and they're like, "Again?" Well, I gotta keep up with this guy's personal life, but I started going, and it was a really interesting process going up as, first of all, understanding what it is to do stand-up, and but also through the eyes of somebody who has no connection to performing whatsoever, and try to really sort of grasp what that feeling was. And then during the day, we'd go and sort of work on the stand-up. So I did that for 6 weeks every night, 3 times a night, and it was really important to try to really absorb that. It was complicated too, because I'm going as this other person, and I'm trying to see it through his perspective, and I'm trying to also gauge where he's at doing the different sets. Alex's first time going up, his second time, his last time, see him getting different levels of comfort, how he's affected by what's going on in his relationship with Tess, all those things. So it was it was real mindfuck. Can I say that word? Is that okay?
This has an R rating, right?
Yeah, we say it, yeah. You would have walked out by now.
What did you enjoy kind of about doing well with the crowd, and then maybe, I don't know if you had some...
Well, I had a lot of people ask me if I bombed on purpose. No, but I did bomb, which is, it in and of itself was really crazy. One Saturday night, we went down and I used some other jokes as well, just because it was a really raucous Saturday night crowd, and it went really well. They were probably all drunk, and I remember coming upstairs at the olive tree, which is exactly how it is in the movie, and Liz, who plays herself in the movie, who is the manager of the cellar, she said, "You can go around the corner to this room at the bar. There's a spot available right now." So I was riding this high of feeling like I sort of killed it. We were like, oh, and Bradley and I were like, oh, we're gonna do a Netflix special, it's great. We're just on top of the world. 5 minutes later, same material, complete bomb. Yeah, and there's nowhere to hide. So you just kind of get through it, and but it was also really valuable, you know, in a lot of ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like improv and stand-up have not really anything in common, right?
No, I mean, I think all of it has, there are through lines of like sort of timing and all that kind of stuff for sure. If we were to break it down, that would be really boring. But they are very different disciplines for sure, for sure.
Yeah, it's cool to watch. Glad that we get to experience it. Miss Laura Dern, I think you guys are.
Laura Dern. She's the greatest.
Yeah, had you guys met before? How did you develop your rapport, as it were?
Well, we did. We knew each other a little bit. She and Bradley are good old friends, and he and I are old friends, so we kind of knew each other through that a little bit, but not that well. And then when Bradley said, I think this character needs to be, he kept saying like a titan, a beast, and you know, it's got to be Laura Dern. I'm like, yeah, good luck. Like, and then she said yes, and it was just immediately just raised everything with the movie. And so we started to work on the script a little bit. She brought so many great thoughts and ideas into, you know, really informing us as we were rerunning tests. And then we just did a lot of work. We did a lot of read-throughs, and we did a bunch of workshops together, just the two of us with Bradley, doing a lot of sort of dream work and all this kind of stuff that we were doing to try to understand each other and get closer and develop this relationship. Because it is one of those things that you, all of a sudden you're working with somebody and you're trying to create that intimacy, and you run the risk of it kind of feeling really false. And we wanted the movie to feel genuine. We wanted the relationship to feel really authentic, and that these people really did care and you know, care about each other and love each other.
Yeah. What did you like about the kind of acting muscles you do get to flex in this?
It was scary.
Yeah.
For me, just because it was such a departure of the stuff that I've been doing for the last 25 years or whatever. It's much closer to the stuff that I wanted to do when I was young. When I was 20 and I moved to New York from Toronto, that was always kind of the thing I wanted to do, and life took me in a different direction. Not that I'm complaining, but doing it when it actually came time to doing it, it was a very, to try to be vulnerable in that way where, you know, there's a scene and there's no punchline. You know, you don't let the air out of the bag, and you really have to kind of dig deep and experience that. It was very new to me. It had been a long time. And I guess nervousness and excitement are very close in terms of emotions. And for me, I kind of experienced, I was always saddling the two.
Yeah. How did you feel at the end, like rap? Are you someone who dwells or can kind of say goodbye and celebrate the process?
Well, I mean, this is, because it's so personal, I mean, it's definitely still, it's always going to be a part of me. I'm really proud of the movie, I think, of what we did. And I had a couple like really strange moments. You know, Alex, if you promise not to tell anybody, Alex finds this thing that's so out of his purview, you know, doing the stand-up, that allows him to open up and kind of, you know, find things about himself and start to talk in a way that he hasn't before. And I had this moment when we were shooting the movie, when we were doing all these really emotional, vulnerable scenes, where I came back to my apartment in New York, and I realized that I was on a parallel track, me, myself, that Alex was in doing this movie. And it was a very revealing moment for me. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, I ended up feeling like a kid again. I ended up feeling like the 20-year-old who moved to New York. And it really changed my life in a lot of great ways, yeah. Don't tell anybody.
One of the things too is there's really wonderful emotion, beautiful drama, but there's also, you guys also laughed in all the right moments, at least what we could hear. There's such good comedy too. How was it to play? You've got Bradley and I to play with Laura, also a familiar face in Sean.
Yeah.
How was
Sean Hayes,
your
if people
experience?
and that's his husband, Scotty. Yeah, that's Sean's husband, Scotty. When we were trying to, like, we had these characters of Jeffrey and Steven, and Sean's like, let's just, Brad said, let's just get Sean and Scotty. And Scotty's not an actor. So we called him, we're like, hey, will you guys do this? And we want both of you. And Scotty's like, you want me? And he was amazing. It was really fun. And yeah, Brad is hilarious in the movie, right, as Balls, outrageously. And that was really fun to kind of play a straight man to Bradley. That was fun for me. Yeah, it was, God, all of it. I mean, just standing there and watching little bits and pieces of it, just remembering the days and what we went through and how fun it was really exhilarating.
Personally, for me, since I could ask the questions, I'm a huge Peyton Manning fan, so I was psyched to see my MVP.
How great was Peyton Manning, too?
Matt, I listened to that episode of the podcast when he was on.
Yes, we all kind of knew Peyton, well, Bradley and I both knew him a little bit differently. And so he was somebody that I talked to and I hung out with a couple times. I know that sounds really fancy that I was hanging out with Peyton Manning.
We want you to be hanging out with him.
Yeah, oh, you do, okay. So when but that character is really important, that he is somebody who you believe is a retired athlete who has that sort of, that presence of an athlete. And what's remarkable, I think, about Peyton is considering how well known he is. He's in every other commercial, he's a two-time MVP, Hall of Famer, and yet, for me, 5 seconds in, you forget that it's Peyton Manning. And that's a testament. He's I've always said he's the best acting athlete of all time. And right? And I think he kind of proved it. Yeah, he was so game and he just jumped right in, super prepared, and it was great.
What has, now that the film is kind of out in the world a little bit, you've been promoting it for a little bit, how does it feel? How does it feel talking about it? Do you feel like you're having kind of more in-depth conversations or because it is, a different experience, or maybe I'm projecting that maybe it's a different experience and you're enjoying it?
No, you're right. It is a different experience. And it is, yeah, it's fun when you, it feels like a privilege when you get to work on something for a long time and then that there's enough interest that people maybe want to hear you talk about it. Because for us, it is such a big piece of our, I started writing this, I met John Bishop in September of 2018, and that's how long it's been. So the idea that I'm here today is really kind of trippy, talking about this thing that we actually got it made. Yeah, and I love that you guys are engaged, and I know that we're not supposed to do this, but I kind of want to hear if anybody else has got a question. I know we didn't even talk about it, but I mean, well, the people who stood up, obviously, you get like 5 questions.
One of the best parts of the movie is how vulnerable Alex is and how close the camera stays to him, which I feel like allows the audience to stay really close to him. That was probably scary for you as a performer. So I was wondering, what about you as an actor changed after this movie from being so exposed and so close to us?
Other question, can you guys hear that in the back?
You guys hear that?
Oh.
Yeah, so the question is a great question about how close the camera is and how it changed me as an actor or what that experience was like. Great question. Again, it was Bradley this close to me. and we've been friends for 25 years. We shared a place in Venice 20 years ago. We know each other very well. We know everything about each other. And there's a deep trust. It was a new experience having the camera that close. And there were a lot of things happening. One is I did trust him, and by being that close, he was able to talk to me. The way Bradley works, there's no video village, so there's no separation. He's right there even if he's not operating. But and there's no hard action and cut. It's a conversation. You start rolling, he brings the camera up, and it's very unusual. He talks to you. So a lot of those times he's talking to me and we're having a conversation. We spent a lot of time scrubbing it because obviously you could hear him talking on my mic. And so there was a conversation that was happening at all times. And that was, we started that when we were camera testing, and that just became the language of how we did it. And so I had a little bit of a runway before everybody else. And then when we all started shooting at Laura, it was an adjustment to get used to this kind of very intimate talking. There's a scene that we refer to as the vampire that you just saw, where it comes sort of Alex is shot out of the attic scene onto the stage, and we had a false start the first time. I'm way down in the cellar behind this kitchen, like in the boiler room basically, and we sort of false start and I go back, and Bob Castrone is a really funny guy who helped us with a lot of the comedy. He came and said, Bradley says, we're rolling, you're going again. I'm like, wait, I haven't talked to him about what, he's like, no, you're going. And they're like, okay, here we go. And we're going, and I sort of went out to talk to him, and Bradley mounted up, and I just walked out, and he followed me. And it was kind of chaotic, and he's right behind me, and I get up on the stage, and he just starts saying, he's got the camera, and he just starts saying, avoid me, avoid me, avoid me. And I just started avoiding, and then in that process, he didn't say, and then all of a sudden, I just started doing that scene. And it was, in a lot of ways, because he was right there, because we had this thing, it took away being in my head and thinking about this important, scene or monologue or stand-up set that Alex has to give, and was able to just kind of do it. And so in a lot of ways, it took being in that, having that relationship was really important. We also wanted the camera to feel like, we wanted the movie to feel less like you're watching it, observing it, and more like you're in it. Like the camera is there, is kind of another person in the conversation to kind of give it that authentic feel. That was really important. So great question.
Yeah. You want to take another one?
Yeah, why not?
So, being so intimately involved with the creation of it, the screenplay and everything, did you find yourself more beholden to the page, or less than when you're doing something that you're not as intimately involved in?
You mean in terms of like improvising lines and stuff? I mean, all of it was scripted. That's the truth. So even in the most chaotic moments, the stuff that's really sort of improvised is the behavior. That's the discovery when you start. We know what we want. We know what the scene is. We know what the dialogue. We know what's happening. We know where everybody's coming from. And then in that moment, what surprises us is the behavior. Lots of stuff happened. I mean, the end of the Balls Alex scene after her birthday party, when Alex keeps going, wait, what did Christine say? Did she say something like that? That's just us fucking around. If we'd gone half a frame longer, you see I totally bust. But all of it, most of it was, again, like all of that stuff was just, the improv was, we never like, oh, in this scene you have to get here. We'd see what happens. And the difficult parts were that there are a lot of scenes where there's no dialogue, where it's just behavior. And that's the stuff that's actually even weirdly scarier, because it is just behavior. So, yeah. I'll take, how about one more, and I do have to go. I know that sounds like a lie, but it's true.
Hi, brilliant work. When you kind of find your groove with comedy, for example, in a scene where you're just kind of going that train moves, did you have a different experience finding that groove with dramatic work, or did you feel that kind of muscle still there, I guess?
Great question. Yeah, it was that experience was, there were moments where I remember a scene where we were shooting a scene and we started rolling, and I didn't know, it just didn't feel authentic, and it felt like acting. It felt like we were just trying to go for a result. And Bradley put the camera down and we started talking, and he said, what's going on? And it was, again, don't tell anybody. It was a moment where I had to kind of just be honest. I'm 54 years old when we were shooting it, and I just said, I felt this pressure that I wanted it to be good. And I looked at my friend and said, I don't want to let you down. And he said, I don't want to let you down. And we both ended up tearing up. It was crazy that I'm telling you this. And in that moment of sort of revealing that sort of was a watershed moment for me of just letting go of ego and failing and all that stuff, and just being able to be, so thanks.
I'm a bad person because I have to wrap us up, but Any parting words, any last thoughts to send everyone off with?
Oh my God.
Terrific audience questions, by the way.
Yeah, really, really good impromptu.
Great audience.
Oh yes, I have a funny word. Please tell if you liked it, please tell your friends. We're a little movie, and so if you did like it, please tell people. Is that shameless?